Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God Almighty, who is great and merciful. I would like to start today's proceedings and like to welcome our esteemed guest from the United States of America. So he is, you can see the picture. So he is traveling all, can you see the picture, Taskin?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir, we can see. We can.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Stephen is flying, virtually flying all across. You see, when you fly, you fly this way actually. He's flying all over from Canada, you see from this route over Iceland and England, and from this way over Europe and Turkey and landing in Karachi. So this is Appalachian State University. And if you look at the other map, so this is the way the route comes in from England, France, Germany, Italy, or Turkey, over Turkey, Iran, and here you land in Karachi. So, you know this building, Stephen?
That building actually does not look familiar.
Oh,
Francis Marion. Yes, I do recognize that building. I was at the wrong university. Yeah.
Yes, this is a place where Steve has been there, and he did his undergrad, I think, there.
Yeah.
And this is a place, Washington State University, where he did his master's and PhD.
Yeah.
He's a very young man. And so these 3 slides were made by Abdullah. And the purpose was to introduce our guest. And he has something very interesting. His wife belongs to Russia. So we will be talking some very interesting things about United States, Russia, his PhD, management, entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, networks. I think all this is needed for our entrepreneurial journey. So I think like 43 people have joined in, and like to.
पहले वो ना वो यू कर देंगे ना जल्दी से तो वो हो जाएगा.
Okay.
बंद नहीं होता.
So it's over to Steve, sir. Over to Steve. Steve, you're the co-host, and it's over to you.
Okay,
Professor Hans has joined from Bangkok. He's a professor of entrepreneurship.
Oh, great! Right, I met him last time. Yeah, a few days ago.
So he's there. I'm going to rename him. I'm going to rename him as IBA guest, and Hans Gulish, Germany, Bangkok, Pakistan. I can write many countries in front of him. So welcome, Hans.
Sawadika.
Swadika.
Salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam. So over to, so we have a lot of people coming in.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll just from Quetta. Yeah, you just please upload yourself. Faisalabad, Sargodha, Gujranwala, Karachi, Bangladesh. So we have Nusrat Hussain from Bangladesh.
Okay,
Nusrat, welcome. Nusrat, welcome to the course. Balu Ashan. Nusrat, can you say in Bangladesh? Say hello in Bangladesh.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Shahid.
Yes, how do you say in Bangladesh? In Bangladesh language, how are you?
Kemon acho?
Kemon acho, great, welcome. Thank you very much. I hope your family and parents are fine. Say our regards to them.
Yeah.
Samir, please rename yourself. Everybody rename yourself. Shahid Iqbal, please help your people. Raza Mustafa, please help your people. You have been made co-hosts. Pavina, welcome. Welcome to Pakistan. Pavina Jansida, Thailand. Welcome. So over to my friend Steve.
Yeah,
Steve,
thanks so much.
There used to be a film when I was in '74 in the US. There was a film called The $6 Million Man. And the hero in this kid's film his name was Steve.
I'll need to watch that. There's not enough Steve Hero movies that I'm aware of.
So you need to watch that movie,
yeah,
okay?
I need to go find
it was in
that.
73.
Yeah. Thank you.
He was he was a $6 million man. He was fitted with bionic arms and legs. He could jump. He could run fast. He could see like 1 kilometer away. So kids used to love him. So $6 million man. So
I'll try to live up to the name this evening. We'll see.
Yeah,
you let me know at the end.
When you're ready, tell me when you're ready, okay?
Yeah, I'll begin. I just want to say thanks to everybody for having me. Salaam alaikum. Is that close?
Yeah, walaikum salam. Very close.
Okay. Yeah, this will be my first talk in Pakistan, granted virtually. But I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for everyone coming. I know it's late over there for the first session. It was late for me, so I appreciate you reciprocating today. And so I want to keep things fairly informal. Certainly feel free to use the chat box if you want. I'll try to keep an eye on that, and if you want to speak up, I'm fine with that as well. And I'll try to share my screen here. Let me see if I can do that and give you a little brief intro to who I am. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
So you see a PowerPoint slide here. So this is me, Stephen Creek, and I want to give a talk on social capital. And I chose this topic because I think it has it has important implications, not just for entrepreneurship, but within entrepreneurship, it has some really important implications for entrepreneurship via effectuation. And looking at the kind of schedule you've been following over the past week, I think you've already dove into effectuation a little bit. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're still on the way, and I think this will add value, a lot of value and complement.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I hope so. And so to facilitate, some of the effectuation and social capital, I think it's a good idea for me to share a little bit about myself, because I don't want to just come and give a talk and leave. Part of the reason I like to integrate with other people, both professors, Dr. Qureshi, Hans, and all the students as well throughout the world. I'm not here for a paycheck, right? I'm here to get to know other cultures. How does entrepreneurship work in other places? And so I love to learn, and that's really why I'm here. So it's not just to share knowledge, but it's to get to know people as well. And so I'm really, really happy to be here and be able to do that a little bit. So please feel free to not let our interaction stop today, is what I'm saying. If a year goes by and you decide, I remember that guy from Appalachian State University said something about this, send me an email, and let's get a new conversation started. So here, that was that first picture you saw. The nursing building was in Francis Marion. I went there in 2002. I was a runner in high school, and you wouldn't know it by looking at me today, but I was a pretty fast runner back then. And so I had a scholarship to go run in South Carolina. And so I grew up in New York, not New York City, but I came down to Francis Marion University in South Carolina, and I did a bachelor's in information systems. And I immediately got a job after my bachelor's working in the payroll industry. And the whole time I was doing that, the company tried to say, go back and get your master's degree. And at that point in my life, I was pretty much over doing anything related to academics, which is kind of ironic if you look at what I'm doing today. So I worked in payroll for almost 10 years after my bachelor's degree. And then I finally went back and did my MBA at the same university at Francis Marion in South Carolina. My MBA I found to be very, very exciting, probably because I already had some work experience in business at that point. And that's when my mind started thinking, well, maybe I'll just keep doing this and go get a PhD. So I did that at Washington State University. Our mascot is the cougar. So here's kind of the WSU, but in cougar form. And so I was there for 4 years, and in 2018, I finished my PhD, took a job at Appalachian State University. Here's the logo for that. And I've been here for the last 2 years, teaching business strategy and entrepreneurship. Just to back up.
Steve, can you put it on full mode in PowerPoint mode, please?
I can.
Yeah, that'll be good. In full PowerPoint mode. Taskin, you want to say something? Taskin?
Yes. Hello, Professor Steve.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, everything's good here. Just one thing, since you have the controls and you're sharing the screen, if you could turn off the annotations, because sometimes we have distractions.
Okay, where do I do that?
All right, on the top right, you will see a drop down for view options,
Sure.
and you will have the option of disabling attendee annotations.
You
So you
go
want,
to
you want me to
annotate.
disable?
Yes.
Okay, should be done.
That's it. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Go to
Sure.
PowerPoint mode, please. Go to PowerPoint mode. Yeah. Full screen mode.
On my computer, I see full screen mode.
Can you do F5?
F5. We can't see, we see the partial mode.
Okay. Yeah, I have 3 screens on my computer. That's probably the problem. Let me see.
Okay, so then carry on then. Then you can make it a bit bigger if you, okay, then go on.
You see my slides now? I mean, in the small mode again.
Yeah, in the small mode. We see that
Okay.
in small mode. Okay,
You
then
can
carry
zoom
on.
in.
Yeah,
can
we'll yeah, let me try that. That's probably as big as I can. Yeah, that's probably as big as I can make it without going into full screen mode. So anybody in here recognize the symbol here in red? I don't know if it made it to Pakistan or not. But at the time, this was the largest payroll company in the world. Maybe still is. And so I learned, I got my foot in the door essentially doing data entry. And then I quickly got into kind of sub-management, did some business analysis, which was pretty fun. That's where I started working with people all over the world. And then eventually I got into operations management. I did that for close to 5 years and managed 3 different departments, total of upwards of 75 people. And so I learned a lot, relevant to business during my time there, and got more into entrepreneurship after this when I went to Washington State. So if you're familiar with the US at all, this is kind of where I grew up in upstate New York. So the city would be right here. But where I grew up was very, very rural. Nothing like New York City. Came down here, did my bachelor's and master's, came way over here, did my PhD, and this is where I am now. So
Steve, your screen is not moving. In which slide are you?
So you should see 3 pictures. Is that not the case?
Not there. No, we can't. I can't see it. The screen, can you see it?
No, sir.
Your screen is frozen actually. We are seeing only the work experience one.
No, we can't see it.
Yeah, let me
Do it again. Share it again. Share it
I'm
again.
gonna start completely over.
Yes, exactly. We were seeing only that screen, which is.
Okay. How about now?
Yes, now it's personal screen on 3 slides.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Hopefully it'll continue.
Yeah.
So this on the left is my little boy. I just have the
Wow.
one for now. Unlike a lot of little ones, at least here in the United States, most don't like their vegetables and things. He loves them. So, eating lots of corn. This is my wife. We've been taking some sailing lessons. It looks like she really knows what she's doing, but we don't. We're just kind of practicing with some other people, learning how to sail. And then so this is me here in the yellow hat. and some students of mine from Appalachian State. Last summer, before COVID started, we took a trip to see entrepreneurship in China. And so this is a picture of us in China. And, you know, again, goes hand in hand, I think, with effectuation. And if you see these houses in the background, the people that live in this region, you know, they need to eat, obviously. And unlike most of China, where they can easily grow rice, this terrain is so mountainous that they were unable to do so until they started putting their heads together, and they realized that if they hand plowed all of these terraces into the side of the mountain, I don't know if you can see that, it's probably pretty small, but all of these different levels in the mountain here are hand dug terraces that they've filled with water, and they grow rice on the side of the mountain. You know, over years and years, they've created all this. So they all live in this one little area. And just for as far as you can see, it's just all these hand dug rice terraces to keep the town fed. Pretty amazing place, and a good example of effectuation. Right, using
Steve,
what
this
you
is
have.
Appalachian or China? Is this China or Appalachian? This mountain?
This is China. Yeah, China.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so one last thing about me, I have a good connection with Russia. So this is my wife again here in the picture on the top right. And my wife has an interesting story. Could probably spend, you know, far more time than we have just on that one story. But she grew up in a very, very impoverished town in Russia. And her father went to prison when she was like 2 or 3 years old. And one day her mom left to get some groceries and never came back. So she was alone, you know, at 3 or 4 years old with just her sister, who was only 1 year older. And she, so she went into an orphanage when she was 5 and was in the orphanage for nearly 10 years before she was eventually adopted to the United States. And I met her some years later. But we go back sometimes to the orphanage to help out. Russia, you know, their own people typically don't have enough money to help out all of the orphans in Russia. And so one of the things my wife wanted to do was rebuild the playground because it hadn't been done in several decades. In fact, this picture here, you can see some of the old playground. So see the bars, right? There's no nets in the goals, really old. There's no swings even on the swing set. And so we wanted to redo the playground, and we called the director of the orphanage, and he said, yeah, that'd be very nice to redo the playground, but we have a bigger need in that we no longer have access to shower facilities. So they had 250 students at this orphanage and nowhere to take a shower.
Oh my God.
And so we ended up putting together a big fundraiser here in the United States, and we raised nearly $50,000 and were able to redo the shower facilities. So that's what is in this picture here, some of the showers that were done in the orphanage. And then we did redo the playground as well. So we had enough money, luckily, to do both. And so they use the playground year round, as you can see. Even in the wintertime, they're out there playing on the new gear. And so the next step for the orphanage is, you know, this was all very nice, kind of humanitarian aid. But last time we were there, I noticed some of these older students, once they were done at the orphanage and they leave at 16 or 17 years old, they really have nowhere to go. The government provides a small place to live, but they don't have the skills necessary to really provide for themselves. So a lot of these students, they end up having children of their own, and they just go right back into the orphanage. So
Steve, 1 minute. Steve,
cycle.
can you put,
Sure.
Steve, your camera is on your desk, on your keypad.
Yeah,
Can you put the
sorry.
camera towards yourself? A bit more.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
And so, you know, like I said, this was a nice humanitarian thing to do. but the next step is really, instead of just going and helping them, what can we do to help these people help themselves? And so I was supposed to go back this summer. I had plane tickets and everything purchased. And then COVID came and kind of ruined those plans. But I'm sure we'll go back. We have plans now to go next summer, 2021. And the plan is to try to get to know these students a little more, and also contact some of the students who have recently left the orphanage and see how entrepreneurship might be able to change their lives for the better. Because many of the men end up like in the mafia, which is still present in Russia. Some of the women get into prostitution or end up moving in with any man that will, be able to provide them with any amount of income. So it's kind of a sad state. And I think effectuation specifically might be very good for this subset of people in Russia, because actually adoption is closed now. My wife was very lucky that there was a small window where people could even be adopted from Russia, and she was part of that window. But right now, if my wife and I wanted to go to Russia and adopt, we would not be able to do that.
Oh.
So that's where I'm coming from. Part of the reason I wanted to get involved in this course, there's a lot of parallels, I think, between what can be done through effectuation in this course that could be applied in Russia as well. And so what I want to talk today about, and I'm going to get you all involved here in a little bit as well, is social capital, which I think goes hand in hand very nicely with effectuation, because in general, social capital is something we all have to some extent. And in many cases, it doesn't really cost us anything. And I'm not a big guy on definitions and stuff, but I think in this case, it's important that we get an idea of what exactly is social capital. And the easiest thing to remember is just a web of social relationships, which can take many, many different forms. But it's also what that web of social relationships provides for the people within those webs. So things like acquisition of skills and traits, which can produce value in marketplaces, information, trust, norms, a big important one, reciprocity, right? If I get involved in a network and do something that benefits the people of that network, they're more likely to do something for me in the future. Valuable resource embedded in networks of relationships. So it's very people-oriented, and then the skills and abilities that come from that group of people. And we can break that down a little bit further into two types of social capital. So internal, being anything leveraged within a certain community. So like this Zoom call right now is a great example of internal social capital, right? We all have some kind of affiliation with the Entrepreneurship Center in Karachi, and we've all joined together at 10:30 at night for some of you to talk about entrepreneurship and social capital tonight, thus forming an internal community, all gaining internal social capital as we do it. So within these internal groups, we get knowledge, we get visibility, right? I now know some of you know me. We can get feedback, shared innovation. I have a good example of this in a little bit, and again, reciprocity. And a good example of this is peer-to-peer lending. So platforms where people can provide money or other resources to one another. There's a pretty fun website called prosper.com where some of this peer-to-peer lending takes place. And there's been research on this that shows if you're pretty integrated within that online community on Prosper, that you're more likely to receive funding. You can receive money at lower interest rates, and you're less likely to default on whatever loan you get. So some big advantages just from being a part of a community, right? Instead of trying to get into that without being a part of the community. And then the second one, external social capital, is more of what you probably thought of immediately when I started talking about social capital. People like your friends, your family, people in your everyday circles. Though certainly these people are extraordinarily important too, even beyond entrepreneurship. And so some other things that social capital has been shown to improve. I try to take a business perspective here. So career success, the more social capital you have, the more money you're likely to make, the better your employees are likely to be. And then numbers 4 through 7 point directly to entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurial activity in general, likely to increase as social capital increases. Supplier relations, product innovation, which doesn't necessarily mean you're creating the next biggest, greatest invention, right? This can also mean you just did a small change to an existing product, but the more social capital you have, the more likely you're able to do that. And just information in general, right? The more people you know, the more circles you're in, the more information is going to be available to you. And so I started researching this social capital about 5 years ago. And at the time, there was this interesting article that just came out by Massimo Colombo and some of his colleagues. And the context of this research is crowdfunding. If you're not familiar with crowdfunding, it's a way that entrepreneurs go about getting money for their new idea, but it takes a completely opposite approach of what most entrepreneurs traditionally had done, which is they go try to find 1 or 2 or 3 rich investors that can invest in their product. Crowdfunding takes the opposite approach, where they try to get several people or sometimes hundreds of people all to give a small amount of money, and they use that to launch their product. And so within this crowdfunding context, what this research showed was that internal social capital, right, those closed, tight communities are more important to fundraising success than external social capital, which is, friends and family and things like Facebook. But one thing I had a problem with there was that their measure for external social capital was LinkedIn, friends on LinkedIn, social media website. And to me, that's not nearly as strong as the relationships people have with family and friends. And so I asked this question, is this really true? Is internal capital more important than external social capital? And so I went about trying to answer that question myself. And the real answer here is both are pretty important. But which is most important? Is it internal or external? And I thought I'd show an example of a really innovative, fairly simple product that on one of these crowdfunding websites made a lot of money. So they were very successful. So if you notice here, can you see that video? It says BAU backs.
No, sir, we can't.
Oh, you can't. Okay. Glad I asked. I'm gonna try to reshare the screen once more.
Yes, sir.
Try this way, yeah.
How about now?
Yes, it's showing now.
One our student from Azerbaijan is asking, which town is this? You in Russia? Which town is it in Russia?
Very small town. It's called Porhov, which is kind of near Pskov.
Okay.
Do you know Pskov?
I don't know that, but maybe she knows that. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you see my web browser here?
Yes, exactly. We can.
Okay. And still you can see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So I'm just going to play like a 3-minute video here. And this is a product that was launched on a Kickstarter website, which is a crowdfunding website. So they've created a product, and now they're trying to get people to invest just a small amount of money so that they can grow their business. Is the sound coming through?
The sound is not coming, but the picture is coming. Maybe you can
Okay.
share it again and select that sound button. When you share, there's a sound button on the share screen, computer sound.
Okay.
Then it will come.
Yeah, got it. Okay, let's try again.
Yes.
So these guys made a jacket for travel. Okay, so that's most of the video. I think probably you get the idea. So I don't know if you've seen some other places on the website already, but this is a fairly simple product, right? I mean, it's a jacket. It's got some interesting kind of innovations within the jacket, right? You can blow up a headrest, or there's a pen, but it's nothing we haven't seen before, right? So that's what I meant by it doesn't have to be this great new invention. But if you look down here, can you still see the website?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, we can see.
So this group of entrepreneurs was trying to raise $20,000 US to start this product. And what they got was $9,192,000. And so this is kind of an extreme example. Most people that try to raise money in this way, they don't get nearly this much money. But in this case, these entrepreneurs raised nearly 10 million US dollars to produce jackets for travel. And then down below, you can also see how many people gave money to these entrepreneurs. And it's not a lot of money, you know, it might be $20, right? If you look right here, you can pledge only $5 to support these entrepreneurs in some way. But I wanted to show you this, not just to show how simple innovation can be, but also how big crowdfunding and how important crowdfunding can be to some entrepreneurs. And so this was the context that I was doing my research on social capital in. Stop the share again. And so what I ended up doing to find out how are these people getting some of this money at least, was I emailed people who had started these campaigns on the internet, like that video we just saw. So I might have emailed the founders of that project and asked them to take a survey. And so specifically what I did is I sent out individual emails to a bunch of different teams or entrepreneurs. And this was, you know, over the course of 3 years. And so eventually I emailed almost 2,500 different entrepreneurs who had tried to raise money in this fashion. It took a very, very long time to do that because I had to first find how to contact them, and then I had to actually send the individual email. And at the end of all that work, I got 172 survey respondents. So fairly low response rate. And out of those, I could only use 130 on different surveys, but that's enough to draw some reasonable conclusions. And what I found was it's not as anonymous as it looks. Like, people aren't just posting a product on the internet and having random people like you and me stumble upon that project and deciding to give it money. A lot of it stems from family and from friends. So if you see the percentages here, I'll try to blow that up a little bit. 70% of entrepreneurs had backing from family. 83% of entrepreneurs had support from their friends. The average amount of times family supported the campaigns was nearly 4. Nearly 27 or 26 friends supported their campaigns. In this case, family supported more money than friends did, but friends still supported around $81 on average. And that's far more than you'd get from just a random person who stumbles on your campaign. So average total funding from family, $720. Average total funding from friends, around $2,100. And most of these are US-based campaigns. So I imagine, you know, as you travel the world in different spots, you'd come up with different numbers. But the takeaway here is still the same, right? It's important to have friends and family involved in what you're doing. I'm just trying to catch up on the chat here. I hope I didn't miss anything. And then ultimately, at the very bottom of the slide, I found that LinkedIn friends, when I had data on friends and family, LinkedIn friends didn't matter at all. And I found that external social capital, when we include things like family and friends, is actually more important than the internal social capital. But again, right, internal and external social capital, both really important. So I'd encourage everyone who gets to the end of this course you know, stay in contact with the people who are in the course, and feel free to reach out to certainly me, and I would assume I can speak for the other professors here. You know, I don't intend for the relationship to end today. You know, I mean, add me to your social capital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hans, me, Steve, so and all of you are social capital. Yeah,
Right.
great.
Yeah. And so to finish up here, I thought, you know, I'd get the students involved. There's a very, very short case study. I'm going to try to make this as large as I can so that everyone can read it. Let me put this in full screen mode. And so I've got a small case study. It's not necessarily a business case. It's more of a person. We're going to Brazil. So maybe that's one continent we haven't hit yet. So we're going to go to South America and look at a young woman from Brazil, learn a little bit about her life, and then talk about how social capital is important for her, talk about how potentially effectuation could help her in the future as well through entrepreneurship. So take a few minutes, everyone. Let me share my screen here and just read that case through, and then I've got some questions we'll talk about on the next slide. Okay, can everyone see that and read that?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Wonderful story.
So has everyone had a chance to finish reading?
Yeah, I think it's done.
Okay. And can you see the three questions I have written down there now?
So maybe people can answer in the chat box to every question. What do you want, Steve?
Yeah, we can just try to knock them out one by one here. So first, just which, so this is a woman who's been dealing with poverty pretty much her whole life. but that doesn't mean she has no social capital, right? She has a lot of social capital. So what examples of social capital have we seen based on those quick 3 paragraphs? Right? So I see some answers coming through the chat. Sibling, so some family members, a boss, so she's got a network at work. Brother, husband, people who she's working for. So there's at least one more that I've not seen come through the chat yet. They're going quickly. Community, yeah, sure. I mean, certainly she knows a lot of people in the community. Says she can walk basically everywhere, so she should know a lot of people throughout the community. Some knowledge, that's good. Aina. Yeah, so there we go.
Yes, Junaid Babar.
Junaid, yeah, Junaid. So people from her religious group, right? That's another great subset of internal social capital. And so that knocks out all the ones that I saw. But within those groups too, we have some special skill sets. So what kind of skill sets does she have from her social capital? Right, she can build a house. Vision, diligence. Yeah, positive thinking. That's good. So everything we've talked about so far, right, doesn't really need money to start. It's just something she's grown naturally over the course of her life. Enthusiasm, good one, Benish. So now let's move to a more interesting question, number 2. How could Monica leverage that social capital that we've just listed to help her become an entrepreneur? Because remember, right now she's just a secretary, right, working for someone else. But potentially she could flip the script and become her own boss. What ideas do you have for what she might be able to do? Something community, build houses. Yeah, Zara, that's great. I think she could build houses, or at least consult with other people on how to go about building houses. Maybe raise capital for a new venture. Yeah, house construction. I mean, in Brazil, I don't know if you can picture what's going on. The housing in Brazil, specifically Rio de Janeiro, is unlike anything I've seen before. I'll try to pull up what the housing looks like so you can get a better idea of just what this story is talking about. So in Brazil, can you see my screen here with the houses upon houses?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So literally what they do here is there'll be a building, and typically it's owned by a family, but the families are large and they all live together. And so they literally, since there's no land, they just build right on top. And so this is what Monica in the story learned to do, right? She had an existing house already, but she learned how to build a house on top of a house, essentially. And this could be a very valuable skill in a place where if you want to build something new, that's really the only way you can go about building it, is on top of an existing structure. So these little houses are called favela, F-A-V-E-A-L. Yeah, build hunts on the beach, consultancy, it's good. Yeah, so it's favela is the type of house.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. A bar on the beach. There you go, Paras. Okay, so let's move on to the third question. I'm going to reshare that screen. And so, third question. What are the links, now that you know some about social capital and some about effectuation, what are some of the links that you see between those two related concepts? Yeah, I know, good. Making use of what you have to start something. Don't need money to start. And leveraging people like religious community, bird in hand to find new customers. Yeah, giving guidance. Interestingly, in the United States, one of the interesting phenomenons we've seen in terms of business over the past 2 or 3 decades is that the United States used to be a manufacturing powerhouse, and it's really not anymore. So much of that gets, we get from China or other places, and we import the things that we need to be manufactured. But now we're very much a service-driven economy rather than providing products for people. And so perhaps, the person in this story, rather than trying to produce a product like the jacket that we saw, could move on to some kind of service, like showing people how to build these favelas or the housing. Yeah, cost is almost nothing, but output is very high. So Noman and Miriam, I see a couple of people talking about a crazy quilt. I'm not familiar with this. What's the crazy quilt? Is that from another class?
That crazy quilt is the effectuation principle number 3. Quilt means collaboration. Getting your family, friends, and network to work with you. So that is.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, that ties in very nicely with this idea of social capital.
So as a quilt is made of various pieces, then you see a quilt. So there are different pieces, different sizes and colors you bring together. So that concept comes in.
I see. Yeah, affordable loss. Nasli, great. In partnerships with others. Yeah, so this is very good. I really want to try to provoke thoughts on what you can do with seemingly very little. I think everyone has way, way more than we know, even people that appearingly have very little. And you can turn that into value, which is, a big fundamental thing with this course. So let me see. Can you still see my slides here? Is that still up? Okay, so we have, I don't know, 5 minutes left or so, and thought we'd just open it up for questions on me, on Russia, on social capital, effectuation, entrepreneurship, whatever whatever you'd like. Arib would love to share something. Go ahead, Arib, C1.
Arif, you want to share some? So it was a wonderful talk, wonderful talk.
So Arib needs to be unmuted.
Okay, can you do some, can somebody do it?
Yes, sir, we are doing it. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Steve.
There we go.
Sir, in the very first initial sessions, Dr. Shahid had introduced you and told us about your story, and I looked you up and Googled you and studied what you did. I had this question in my mind of how privileged, like how some of us are, and I was just thinking about this and waiting for your session. Like I really wanted to ask you, like with all our privilege, some of us go through some instances of sadness or something like that doesn't really provide satisfaction in our lives. Like whatever we have almost everything that we can ask for, and we don't know what more do we want. Yet even if we do and come into social service and welfare, we don't really have that form of contentment which helps us enrich our lives. And so I really wanted to ask you this today, but during this lecture something happened which relates to what the discussion of social capital today. I had this friend of mine. We grew up together I've known him for 15 years, 16 years. And sir, what happened was that just a few years ago, his family had a horrible collapse. His father fell ill, and they had financial issues to the point that his educational life had to stop. His life had to stop, and he couldn't go to university. He couldn't go to school, and he just did his A levels privately. And our lives continued. We went to college. We got into university, and he had to get a job for himself, and he did everything he could to provide for his family. Like it really hurt me that my friend, someone who was very close to my heart, couldn't really get into that. I couldn't really continue on his life, and he was just in this repetitive process in a very big loop that couldn't really do anything. So a lot of these all of us friends got together and in the past 8 to 9 months prepared him to apply for IBA. Like IBA provides, Dr. Shahid knows this, provides financial aid to its students, and IBA, being a very reputable institution, can actually help change our friend's life. And he prepared very hard. We prepared him in every possible way that we could. Like some of us were teaching tuitions anyway. We gave him tuitions. We connected him with people that can help help him in to build his profile for extracurriculars. We connected him with people that can prepare him for interviews. Like all of us helped him in any different way that we could. And IBA recently changed admission policy to very different standards. And then we helped him again. Like all of us got together in a group to help him again. And during this lecture, sir, just like 30 minutes ago, his confirmation for admission got in for IBM.
Okay, good.
Great. So the aspect of social capital that he had, all of us, like us 7 to 8 friends, helped him actually change his life after like 3 to 4 very horrible years. The idea that he had lost 40 kgs of weight, he was diagnosed with clinical depression. Like all of us, his social capital helped change into that. And the fact that I was a part of it, now my question of contentment in life, like whatever we do, there's not really real contentment or satisfaction. Being a part of this, helping my friend, helping Hassan grow, and he's to grow and come out of that horrible few years just right now, that actually made me feel better. So
Arif, thank you very much. It's a long question. Please be quick. So people are here to listen to him.
That's it. That's
it's
it.
A,
that's
it's an example.
We can give you 10 minutes for your session. That's a very good story. But still make sure that he will go. Make sure that he meets us. Otherwise, he can go into another clinical depression. by spending 4 years and they are not finding a job. And this is happening, I tell you. IBA is not the panacea of anything. IBA, entering into IBA will not ensure anything. Please remember, it's another problem coming up.
Yes,
It's another big problem coming up.
The idea that he made that jump, sir, like we helped him make that jump. That's
Yes,
the idea
right.
of satisfaction.
Please bring him into the class on Monday. Otherwise, he will end up into another depression, and he will take all along you together. All friends will go into another depression. Over to Steve.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues. One of the biggest issues that we face as entrepreneurship professors is not how to teach people entrepreneurship. It's how to teach people to actually help themselves, right? We can sit here and talk about social capital all day, but then for someone to actually go put that into practice, that's the issue I think entrepreneurship as a field hasn't quite overcome yet. You know, we can only fill people's minds with so much information, but eventually they have to go out and use that information themselves, which I think is part of the trouble that entrepreneurship as a field is having. But really, interestingly, even though entrepreneurship has been around for centuries, entrepreneurship as a academic discipline is really fairly new. It's only really exploded in the last 20 or 30 years. So there's a lot of work still to be done in entrepreneurship. So Hans and Dr. Shahid and myself, we're just small little cogs in that wheel, trying to get the word out and trying to convince people that they can help themselves. You know, it's. So
there was another question coming up by somebody. Yeah. I once again appreciate a very good effort. I appreciate that Arif helped, and I like that. There's 7, 8 friends, and may God help them as well. So there was one more question, but it's not there anymore. So I think that is a wonderful talk today, Steve, and it is reinforcing effectuation and your case. And Noman Yusuf, Noman Yusuf from Karachi, please. A quick question, please. Noman?
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hi, great, Noman. How are you?
Steve, I think you should. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. Steve, I think you should study Pakistani society or subcontinent society in general, because people here have a lot of social capital, like family is very interwoven and all. People do know each other, and it's probably moral do support each other as well. But there is this element of, you know, relatives discouraging any new initiative, people putting you down like, oh, don't do that, you know, you might not be able to succeed, you will lose money, why are you going to? So it's a very unique mix where you have the social capital with you, but it's not supportive all the time. So I think you should study this society. You might actually come across new findings. Secondly,
that's right. And it varies a lot depending on where you are. But there have there have been people that have studied this phenomenon already. And you're right, and especially in some cultures, failure has a much bigger impact on people's lives and the way that their family members perceive them. You know, in the US, it's not as big of a deal as it is in, say, Korea, right, where there's a high emphasis on you can't fail. And then in other cultures, you know, women entrepreneurs are discouraged because the man is supposed to be the head of the household. But in those kind of cultures, we find that if the men do allow their spouse to go out and work, that the women can actually do a great job being entrepreneurs. In some cases, even better than the men. So yeah, I agree. That's good insight, and somewhere where there's still a lot of research to be done as well.
Yeah, and secondly, on your comment about you know, teachers actually helping students to a certain extent. Yeah, I think that's the line that somebody, I don't know, people probably haven't figured out as yet how to give the push. That's the most important part of all that I've learned till now, of the effectuation theory now, that you know, you can acquire so much theory, but you need that push, and probably you have to do it yourself, or probably you need someone around you to give you that push to dive into the river and cross it. So
yeah, great feedback. Then let me give one quick example, personal example on failure. And I think there are a couple of lessons you can take from it. But when I was finishing my master's degree, I decided I wanted to go try to get the PhD. And PhD programs are very small. You know, most PhD granting institutions, at least here in the US, they'll admit between 1 and 4 students per year. So it's very, very hard to be accepted in one of these programs. And so I decided I was going to apply to several different universities and hope that I got into at least one. And so I did this. I spent, you know, a few $100s in application fees, all for the hope of getting into a PhD program. And then the letters started coming in, you know, dear Stephen, we really liked your job or your application package. Sorry, right? We admitted someone else who we thought was better, but more fitting. And I got several of these letters before I finally got the one from Washington State that instead of saying, sorry, you can't come here, it said, you know, we'd like to welcome you to Washington State and do your PhD. So I failed, you know, probably 10 or 11 times before I got that one. But you only need one, right? You only need one success. And so now I have that doctor in front of my name, despite not having it in those 10 prior tries, if you will.
Amazing story. Well done.
So I'm going back to the chat here. And if students need to drop off the call, I'm okay with that, though I'm not your lead professor. So I'm reading a question from Shakib Guadar in group AB8. How would you differentiate social entrepreneurship from entrepreneurship? And how can we have a sustainable model for it? The first question, Shakib, how do we differentiate social entrepreneurship from entrepreneurship? I think that's fairly, you know, can be answered relatively easily in that in social entrepreneurship, our main goal is not to get a profit, right? Our main goal is to either help a cause or help some group of people, but we're not driven by money and by profits, whereas most traditional entrepreneurship, that is the goal, to make at least enough money to be able to survive. And in some cases, much more. The second question, how can we have a sustainable model for, I'm assuming you're talking about social entrepreneurship here. That's a very difficult question because it depends heavily on the arena you're doing that entrepreneurship in and what the goal of your business is. And I think it's going to vary based on country and culture quite a bit. And that's really the part that scholars right now are trying to figure out. Is there a model? I don't think there is one overarching model that's going to work in every situation, right? So Dr. Shahid, he's trying to put together a model, effectuation-based model that will work specifically in Pakistan, and perhaps that will work in Russia or somewhere else. Perhaps it'll need to get tweaked a little bit. Perhaps it won't work at all, right? We don't actually know until we go try. So I think that's kind of a never-ending question, though I think there's always improvements that can be made in terms of finding a model or models, you know, multiple models.
So I think the questions will go on, but I think we have taken a lot of time of Steve, and it was something great. A lot of questions are coming in, but I think we will. Filza was at Women Chamber in Multan. In Pakistan, social entrepreneurship is mixed with not-for-profit, so probably we have to work on its acceptable definitions. So these comments are coming in, and Asam Hussain is saying crowdfunding more successful for low-cost projects. So yes, I think it's something new in Pakistan. There's a concept, we have very low credibility here. The trust issue is there because legal regulations are not that strong. So the trust element of trust is not that strong in our in a third world sort of country. So you have to rely on family terms. So we have family networks, Maiman, Chenoti, and they have a lot of, you see, connections. Nazarene, you have any comment from Uzbekistan? Any comment from this side? Last comment, and then we will move on and say goodbye. Have you taken your breakfast, Steve?
I'm needing lunch now. Yeah, breakfast is over, but
Okay,
it's a little past lunchtime now.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah. And everyone, I know there's far more questions than I've answered, but I'm happy to field those questions via email. I'll post my email once more in the chat in case you weren't able to get it. But I'm happy to answer those via email.
So once again, yes, I think we'll be looking forward for Steve's visit to Pakistan. And who wants to host Steve in Islamabad? Who wants to host Steve in Karachi, Lahore? So just say, so Asam Hussain went to Fuqa University in 96 to 98. So you are having a lot of guests, Islamabad, a lot of people from Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi want you to be here, Steve.
Yeah, I have a whole summer worth of places to stay now.
I'm your host in Karachi as well. Noman Nazali she was the ex-president of Women Chamber. Wow. Gwadar is a port city, Balochistan. So you're a very popular person in Pakistan now.
Great.
So, and so can you everybody write a thank you note in your own language? Nazarene, and in German, danke, thank you, Russian, and everybody write a note of thanks to Steve for his valuable time. Hans, would you like to write something? Danke bitte in Thai.
Спасибо. Пожалуйста, Nazarene. I think the writing in Thai is so nice looking. Of course, I can't read a bit of it, but it looks very nice. I actually had a good friend when I was doing my PhD. One of my cohort members was Thai, and I had another one who was from Bangladesh.